Here. Hello everyone, Nick the DM here. Before we get into today's video, I have two announcements. Thank you all so much for being patient while I get set up at my new place. My upload schedule has been kind of frantic recently. And number two, thank you all so much. We hit 50 subscribers. I know it doesn't seem like a lot compared to a lot of other YouTubers, but I really appreciate it. It definitely motivates me to keep going further and further with all these lore videos and such. So anyways, let's get into the video. Today I am here with some more of 5e's Forgotten Giants. Today we're taking a look at the Jotunheim Frost Giants. The Jotunheim Frost Giants are unlike any of the other giants I've covered on this channel so far. The Jotunheim Frost Giants aren't technically true giants, nor are they giant kin. In fact, the Jotunheim Frost Giants aren't connected to Anam the Allfather, the creator deity of the giant races, at all. See, the Frost Giants from the Monster Manual are not the same as the Jotunn from Norse mythology, though they are heavily inspired by them. And I'm happy about that because I can't imagine CR8 monsters being able to fight against Thor even in large numbers like they did most of the time in Norse mythology. The Jotunheim Frost Giants were introduced in the 3.5 Deities and Demigods in the Asgardian Monsters section. These are the famous Jotunn from Jotunheim in Norse mythology who combat Thor and the other Aesir gods and are a major part in Ragnarok, the end of the world. Deities and Demigods didn't give any lore for the Jotunheim Frost Giants, probably because they're basing them directly on Norse mythology origins. So that's what we'll be touching on today. Forget all you know about the Forgotten Realms for this video because we're touching on some Norse mythology. There are many stories of the Jotunn in Norse mythology, but the one we're going to be focusing on today is their origin. In the beginning, there was Ginnungagap, the primordial void. The ice of Niflheim from the north mixed with the heat and fires of Muspelheim from the south. The drops created by this fusion quickened into life and took the form of an enormous man. This was Ymir, also known as Argelmir by the giants. As Ymir slept, he fell into a sweat. From this sweat, new life formed. From his left arm, a female and male, the first of the Frost Jotun, and from his feet, a six-headed Jotun. Many years later, when the Frost Jotun grew in number, three brothers feared the might of Ymir and his kin. These brothers, Odin, Vili, and Ve, fought and slew Ymir. The blood that fell from his body caused a great flood that drowned all but two of the Jotun, Bergelmir and his wife. The two surviving Jotun escaped, and from them the race survived and continued to grow, eventually creating a home for themselves in the realm known as Jotunheim. In Norse mythology, Jotunheim is still on the earth, just separated from Midgard, the land of humans, by a vast ocean. In D&D, on the other hand, Jotunheim is an outer plane home to most of the realms of the giant pantheon, and the afterlife of all giant kind. Either way, Jotunheim is a dangerous place filled with many vicious giants, both alive and dead. Speaking of giants, I decided to convert the stats of the Jotunheim Frost Giant from Deities and Demigods to 5th edition, using comparisons and calculations and charts and whatnot. So let's take a look at these stats. Jotunheim Frost Giant, gargantuan giant with the tag of Titan, chaotic evil. Before I'm going any further, I want to explain the Titan tag because I focused a lot on this. In Deities and Demigods from 3.5, the Jotunheim Frost Giant was labeled as a quasi-deity because of their divine origin. In 5th edition, this would give them the tag Titan. Quote, Titans are the divine creation of deities. They might be birthed from the union of two deities, manufactured on a divine forge, born from the blood of a spilled god, or otherwise brought about through divine will or substance. End quote. This matches with their origin from Ymir, the originals coming from the sweat of Ymir. Though I did not give them this tag at first because technically only the first creatures created from Ymir met this description, as the rest of them were born from other Jotun. The giants that met this, or the Jotun that met this description, were the two giants created from Ymir's arms and the six-headed Jotun from his feet, because they were created from Ymir himself. The current Jotunheim Frost Giants are from a lineage of other Jotunheim Frost Giants. Now, this is what I had initially thought, but upon further research, there is one 5e creature with the Titan tag that reproduces, and its spawn are also considered Titans. Krakens. Krakens mate and produce offspring kraken that continue to have the Titan tag, even when young, as seen in the juvenile kraken from Ghosts of Saltmarsh. So I decided to include the Titan tag. Also, another thing to mention is quasi-deity traits. In earlier editions, all quasi-deities shared some resistances, immunities, and abilities apart from their own personal supply of abilities. But the quasi-deities in 5th edition don't share many traits, or many from the earlier editions, looking at the Atropal, Astral Dreadnought, Empyrean, Kraken, and Tarask as examples. They all have the Titan tag. So quasi-deities like demigods, titans, and vestiges tend to have their own unique abilities. Now, with that out of the way, let's get back to the stats. The Jotunheim Frost Giant has an armor class of 15, which is natural armor. It has 315 hit points, or 18d20 plus 126, and it has a staggering movement speed of 130 feet. Now, some of you might say, oh, well, the conversion might be off because dragons had much higher fly speed in earlier editions. But I was mainly looking at this and comparing it to A, other giants and their conversions, and B, this doesn't even have the highest movement speed in 5th edition. Like, for example, the Solars, Zerial, and Yonsi Bin all have 150 feet of fly speed. So it's fast, but it's not above and beyond what we already have in 5th edition. For ability scores, it has a 25 strength, 9 dexterity, 24 constitution, 10 intelligence, 10 wisdom, and 14 charisma. It has proficiencies in its strength, constitution, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. For skills, it has proficiency in athletics, intimidation, nature, and perception. For damage resistances, it has resistance to fire and lightning. I did take those directly from the 3.5 one, and including their like quasi-deity traits, even though I just explained that they might not all share the same traits from earlier editions or amongst each other. I thought this made sense because they were technically born from like from chaos itself, because like the Gunga Gap, the Primordial Void, then Ymir, then the Jotunheim Frost Giants, and chaotic beings tend to have resistances to fire and lightning, like the demons. That's just me explaining myself. I gave them fire and lightning resistance just because that's what they had in the earlier edition. They also have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing while raging. I'll get to that in a bit. Immunities to cold damage, and immune to being charmed or frightened. They have a dark vision out to 60 feet and a passive perception of 16. For languages, they speak only Giant, though this could change because maybe you want it to be specifically like Jotun, like a different language entirely from Giant, even though that has changed between editions, but everything's up to the DM and their own world, so that's just up for interpretation. And they have a challenge rating of 20. This is because in Deities and Demigods, it went for creatures that didn't have a CR. It said to give them a CR that was equal to whatever class levels they had. The Jotunheim Frost Giant has 20 barbarian levels. Now, again, I gave it abilities that were equal to the 3.5 20th level barbarian, not the current 5th edition 20th level barbarian. So there's a few different things. I just converted what I could from 3.5 into 5th edition, and we'll get into that. For its abilities. First one is Brutal Critical. When the giant gets a critical hit, it rolls 2 additional damage die, for a total of 8d12 with its great axe, or 10d12 with the rock. Next, it has its Danger Sense. Like other barbarians, the giant has advantage on dexterity saving throws against effects it can see, such as traps and spells. To gain this benefit, the giant can't be blinded, deafened, or incapacitated. Feral Instincts. The Jotunheim Frost Giant has advantage on initiative rolls. Additionally, if it is surprised at the beginning of combat and isn't incapacitated, it can act normally on the first turn, but only if it enters a rage before doing anything else on its turn. Next is Immutable Form. Now, this I heavily debated actually giving it because this was one of the quasi-deity traits that technically, if we converted directly, all 5th edition Titans, like the tag Titan, should share. They do not, though, but I still felt that I wanted to give it to the Jotunheim Frost Giant. So the giant is immune to any spell or effect that would alter its form. Legendary resistance 3 times per day. Like normal, if it fails a saving throw, it can choose to succeed. It has magic weapons, where its weapon attacks are magical. And it has rage 6 times per day. As a bonus action, the giant can enter a rage at the start of its turn. This rage lasts for 1 minute or until the giant is incapacitated. While raging, the giant gains the following benefits. It has advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. When it makes a melee weapon attack, it gains a +4 bonus to the damage roll, which I included in the actual attacks. And then it has resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. For its actions, it has a multi-attack where it can make 3 Great Axe attacks. Each Great Axe attack is a +13 to hit, reach of 20 feet, hits one target, deals 3d12 plus 7 slashing damage for an average of 26, or while raging, it deals 3d12 plus 11 slashing damage for an average of 30. Hey everybody, Nick the DM from the future here. I'm mid-edit and I realized I forgot to explain something. Normally, a gargantuan creature wielding a weapon appropriately sized for them would deal 4 die worth of damage, rather than the rather than the 3d12 I have listed for the Great Axe. It normally would be 4d12, but Deities and Demigods specified that the Jotunheim Frost Giant wields a huge Great Axe, not a gargantuan one, so that explains why it does less damage, but it gets more attacks per round. Anyways, just thought I'd mention that. Back to Nick from the past. Rock is its just absolutely best ability, because if you've watched any of my videos, you know any giant with rock is amazing. Any giant without it shouldn't qualify as a giant. It's a ranged weapon attack, +13 to hit, range of 60 normal range to 240 long range. It hits one target and does 4d12 plus 7 or 33 on average bludgeoning damage. Now, these are actually fairly low if you compare them to the chart in the Dungeon Master's Guide about statting monsters based on their CR. It's not super high. It's not gonna hit a lot, and also this is assuming they hit every single attack, which with a +13 is actually kind of not the most likely when you're facing against 20th level party members if this is a properly balanced encounter. But keep in mind it's brutal critical, and it also has legendary actions, which we'll get to. Before that, reaction, rock catching. If a rock or similar object is hurled at the giant can, with a successful DC 10 dexterity saving throw, catch the missile and take no bludgeoning damage from it. Now keep in mind the Jotunheim Frost Giant has a 9 dexterity and no bonus to saving throws, so it has to roll an 11 or higher to succeed on this, which fairly likely, but at least it has this ability. And then legendary actions. It has three legendary actions and 3 options. Of course, with normal legendary actions, only one legendary option can be used at a time and only at the end of another creature's turn, and it regains all legendary actions at the start of its turn. For its first one, it has Axe, which costs 2 actions. The giant can make 1 Great Axe attack. And then it has Detect, where it makes a perception check, and then it has a Rock, which also costs 2 actions. The giant makes a rock attack. So this is kind of how I balanced the damage compared to the chart in the Dungeon Master's Guide. One, they have a kind of less likely chance to hit. They can make upwards of 4 attacks in a full round, which, if they all hit, will be a fairly decent damage. The likelihood of that, though, again, is not the best. And on top of that, they're brutal critical, which, if they do miss a few attacks, once they get a crit with one of these attacks, it'll completely turn the tides of the battle. Like normal with my other videos, you can find this stat block in the description down below. Anyways, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and maybe subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. I post a lot of content on giants, and I have a lot more content for other D&D videos. This was probably one of my more favorite videos so far, just because I adore mythology and I really like D&D, so getting a creature that has canonical stats in D&D to convert and has lore and history and mythology, it's been just absolutely amazing to make this monster. Anyways, thanks again so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!